Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Thank you, Dan. You are listening to the Seattle Shrimp Tank, streaming live to you on Facebook. And you can catch us generally every other week on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time from the virtual Whedon Unleashed studio here on Facebook until we resume broadcasting in our physical studio. Today we are streaming live at a slightly different time, but that's what COVID brings to us. I'm Brad Berger, along with my esteemed co-host, Dan Whedon. You can always catch a replay of the podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle, and now through iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes so you never miss an episode. And if you are subscribed, please rate our podcast on iTunes. Your feedback helps us grow and improve. Our guest for today's podcast is David Doxtater, founder of The Workshop. And by the way, David goes by Dox, so we're going to use that interchangeably, but I think mostly we're going to refer to him as Dox. So Dox, welcome to the Shrimp Tank.
All right, thanks a lot. Glad to be here.
Hello, Brad.
So, hello, Dan. So we truly are virtual, not that we weren't always before, but you are not where you normally are.
I actually am.
You are. So you're back?
Well, I never left.
But you've got other commitments. That's what it is.
Yes. So here, actually, and that was what I wanted to talk about. It's so funny. We segued beautifully. I think that's after, and by the way, I think it's this week. We're celebrating 100 episodes next month.
Yes.
But this is September of 2016 is when we took off. So this is actually
the beginning of our fourth
year. Dox can feel good that he's
on the premiere show of
season 4. But you know, I was supposed to be in Chicago this week. I had a convention that I was taking part in, and of course none of that is happening live. And what happened is that the convention became virtual. And in order to meet the needs of people around the world, including Australia, the timing was set for 1 to 4 Pacific time, which overlapped. And Dox was really great that I was able to make this work. He came on earlier, so virtual actually became flexible. And so I've been 1 to 4 every day now, Monday through Thursday. Instead of being in Chicago, I'm at home, so I don't get to go out to the cool restaurants and do the fun things there.
Or partake of the wonderful pizza.
Or to partake of the wonderful pizza. But you know the interesting thing, Brad, and I'd love your comment, and I think this will segue into talking about Dave, or to Dox. This is an event that I was going to. It's now had to be changed to a virtual event, and the event is still really, really good. I've gotten great value from it. It's all being recorded, which wasn't going to happen before.
Sure.
There's some advantages to that. The other advantage is I'm able to stay here and work with you. It's not as good because I don't get the in-city part of it. But I think one of the things I want to talk to Dox about and get your 2 cents is what we've learned through this last 7 months is not only are we able to continue, there's optimism, we're able to continue, but I don't know if I see a situation where you're not going to see these hybrid models where conferences and conventions are still going to be happening, but there's also going to be this virtual part of it too, to pick up for everything else. And just wanted to get your comments on that.
Yeah, well, you know, obviously, because I'm also involved in various industry groups, professional study groups, et cetera, we've had to shift to a virtual format or cancel, you know, the event. I think, you know, I just share with you from a personal standpoint, I really thrive on human interaction, and I think most people do. So for me personally, I don't want this to be the new norm because I still enjoy meeting people, being engaged with them. I think there's a certain level of loss of body language and communication and that goes along with being in a live event. We certainly have noticed this with regard to our clients. We've worked in the virtual world, having clients all over the world, many of them who travel or live in different countries throughout the world. So it was very easy for us as an organization to shift very rapidly to a virtual world, practically overnight. What it required is that for individuals to kind of get on board with that. And I can share with you that we at Cornerstone, we've been just delighted with the acceptance of individuals to move to a virtual world. But I can tell you that there still is this demand, like, when are we going to be able to get back together again? When can we be in person for our economic forums? And I'll just share with you a personal challenge that I've had having these sorts of things is staying engaged. And I think it takes a mind shift and a discipline shift, because for me to sit in front of a screen for 8 hours a day to participate in a multi-workshop kind of event, which I have to do, I have some professional reasons that I need to do that twice a year. It's been challenging, but I have enjoyed the flexibility that it offers. But for me personally, my attention span is something that I need to work on.
Well, you know what we need to work on now? We need to meet Dox. And Dox comes to us as a referral from not only a former guest, but a shrimp peeler sponsor, Jana Kramberger from SJ Graphics. So Dox, welcome. I think Brad's going to read a bio here, and we're going to learn a little bit more about you before we dive into questions.
You got it. So as I mentioned, David's formal name is David, but he goes by Dox. David is a highly experienced event designer and producer, creating hundreds of beloved public and private Northwest experiences. He is an expert in live experience design and production while serving businesses, higher education, major league sports, cultural institutions, civic institutions, tourism, and cause-driven organizations. David founded The Workshop in 1997 with a vision for inspiring people to connect with new ideas, celebrate achievement, and participate in making our world a better place. In the past 20 years, The Workshop has produced countless concerts, galas, festivals, city and community celebrations, and corporate events. Prior to The Workshop, David began his career as a one reel vaudeville show pioneer, building the Bumper Shoot Arts Festival into a world-class, multi-million-dollar entertainment brand. And as VP, he also led development of the iconic Summer Nights at the Pier concert series and Seattle's 4th of July fireworks show on Lake Union. David has also been executive director for the Tacoma Tall Ships Festival and director of events at the University of Washington. I will mention that when the Tacoma Tall Ships comes, you can look out the studio windows of the Shrimp Tank normal studios to see all of those beautiful ships. Welcome to the Seattle Shrimp Tank, David /Dox. We're very interested in learning how your business and industry have adopted to the new COVID-19 environment.
All right, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
So Dox, let's just dive into that with the first question. It's kind of the 800-pound gorilla. You have an incredible resume. If people go to your website, they'll see a really cool list of clients that you've worked with. March of this year changed everything. Talk about BC before COVID and AC after COVID and your business.
Well, yeah, once COVID hit, everything in all my business and everybody's business in the event industry just came to a standstill. There wasn't anything at first. I think that first month was really, we all were reeling, trying to figure out, what is this? What does this matter? How does this matter to me? And when will it end? And I think at that point we are all hoping, okay, maybe in a month or two, maybe
Right.
at the end of the summer, maybe even earlier. Well, we've all come to realize that none of that is coming to pass, and it's a long haul right now. There's a lot of people in this industry, friends of mine and business friends, that are not making it. There's a lot of failures happening right now, and that's really sad, because it's our community, it's our people, and But all we can do is be hopeful. Try to plan forward, create strategies for our pivots and our work forward, and wait for things to clear up.
So Docs, I've got a couple of questions because I think you very accurately pointed out my viewpoint. Right when this all came down, I kind of was resisting this cancellation of in-person events, and I fell into the camp that this is only going to last a couple of months, and then we'll figure it out, and all we'll go forward. I guess the question is from the industry standpoint, was there a particular time frame where the realization came that this is not going to be a couple months, it's going to be much longer? So part A of my question is kind of when was that? And then the second part of my question is, what in your view has been the biggest differentiator from those that aren't going to make it, right? And those that are going to make it in kind of this new reality that we're living in?
Yeah, that's a good question. I realized I was fairly early in the industry to realize that we're in trouble, and this is a longer haul than we all had really thought. About 4 weeks in, as I looked around the world and the country and locally, I could see that that it was a complete freeze. And just by watching, the University of Washington's got great data to help us to understand what's going on with this virus. And so I about 4 weeks in, I started to think, I think college football is not going to happen. That was the first big breakthrough in thinking for me, because I work with the Huskies on home game football games, but now and so I had to be really careful about saying that too loud. Sure. Because everybody wants to be positive and optimistic,
right? And
I just came in like Debbie Downer, and so I just didn't say a lot at first. But that's what I thought. I still think that it's a ways off for events. I mean, who knows really? We can't predict the future with the vaccines and all. But I think more importantly is, when does the public feel comfortable to gather again?
Right.
That's the real unknown for me. And I think that will be, once we get the trust and the confidence of the public to gather, then I think we can start really feeling like things will move forward. They won't return to normal though. There won't be, can't look backwards, I don't think, and expect for your business to do well. I think you have to look forward, because this this pandemic has changed the industry, and it's not going to just bounce back to the way it was. I think we're gonna, all the hybrid and virtual events that are now happening are here to stay. They're going to be incorporated into the future. They're into the future of producing events. There's new tricks, and that you've learned, I've learned along the way, that will actually make our events, our gatherings, better in the future.
So Docs, I want to kind of play off of that a little bit. I've kind of thought of this as flying in airports pre-September 11th and post. Flying has remained the same. The whole logistical part of, you got to go to an airport, you get on a plane and you go someplace. But that whole experience before September 11th, completely different than after. And I kind of look at events in the same way. This is probably something that will carry over post-commercial, but could you maybe talk a little bit about, in your crystal ball, what are some of the immediately noticeable things that will be different about flying events?
Well, I think that technology is going to play a much more important role. I think events and broadcast production have merged, and I think they will always stay merged now. In order to do good events right now, you have to be a television producer. And I think that that's not bad. And I think that will merge. There's also going to be a demand from the public in order to trust a gathering, that it is safe and that you can prove that it's safe. So there's going to be a whole new layer of personnel needed to produce events, live events, which are going to be public safety officers, health officers, screening people, just like you see t-shirt security at concerts and stuff. You're going to see businesses emerge that do health screenings and help to communicate a healthy group environment.
Well, what has merged is our commercial break, our first commercial break. We're going to take a short break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back with our guest, David Doxtater, founder of the workshop for our Hot or Not section of the show, we're going to find out if fist bumps are hot or not. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Seattle Shrimp Tank.
The Seattle Shrimp Tank is brought to you by IdealLife360.com. What would it be like to be in the best shape of your life, both physically and mentally, every day for the rest of your life? Have awesome relationships with the people you care about most. Never having to worry about money again. What would it be like if you received a letter out of the blue and suddenly discovered you had 20 more years to live than you ever imagined? What would you do with those extra years of your life? How many lives would you touch? What kind of legacy would you leave behind? What changes would you make today knowing you had 20 more years in your future? What new, big changes would you take on? What would be next? Text the word ideal to 98. Text the word ideal to 89800 to discover how to rethink, redefine, and reinvent the best years of your life. And again, that ideal number is 89800.
Welcome back to the Seattle Shrimp Tank from the virtual Whedon Unleashed studio, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in Seattle and the greater Puget Sound area. I'm Brad Berger, along with my esteemed co-host, Dan Whedon. Remember, you can always catch a replay of the podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or catch us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. For our next segment, Hot or Not.
And Hot or Not is sponsored by our Shrimp Peelers West Sound Workforce, Port Ludlow Resort, Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, SJ Graphics, and the Kitsap Sun newspaper. Docs, Hot or Not is where Brad and I pepper you with some questions regarding strategies, topics, concepts for life and business. And you're going to tell us if they're hot or not and why. And at the end, you win absolutely nothing. So I got to believe that when people start going back to events, and you made a great comment about it's about the people when they're comfortable going back to events, that the old tried and true handshake greeting may be a thing of the past. So fist bumps, hot or not?
Well, unfortunately, I think they're hot because it's all you can do other than your elbow tap.
Right.
And yeah, so it's I think we're into that. I think masks and handshaking, not handshaking, is our future for a while.
Brad, do you mind if I ask a real quick follow-up question?
Go for it.
One of our former guests, I don't know if you know Jackie Wood from Sparkwood Events, had a chance to talk to Jackie about some of this, and she said they did an event, or she had seen an event where people were able to get together. I can't remember the whole thing, but they had different wristbands on when they came in as to their level of comfort of how they would like to be greeted. Green means like go, anything goes, I'm a hugger. And red was like, stay 12 feet away from me. And there was a yellow for the, and so I thought it was kind of an interesting concept. Can you see something like that, especially around corporate events or events like that, where somebody has a chance to at least identify themselves as, this is my comfort level?
I hadn't thought of that. It's an interesting idea. I think that once events we're capable to hold events again, just by guideline, that we'll be a little past that sort of social stratification and communication.
So, Docs, the question that I've got for you: hot or not, virtual reality conferences?
Well, again, hot, because that's really all we got right now.
And I kind of, where my question was going with this, I suspected that you're going to say that is, my kids have introduced me to VR. They've got a VR goggles and headset, and they play some super cool games.
Yeah.
And I'm responsible, in my life, for example, this is fine for business transactions, right? The ability to meet in a Zoom call or any one of the various teleconferencing, video conferencing software is fine. But one of the things that I'm finding is I lead a group of young adults as part of the Civil Air Patrol, and we've had our weekly meetings, and I will tell you, they're getting a little boring because it's just this, right? And the suggestion was made that there's maybe some technology coming down the pike where you actually enter a virtual arena, right? And have the ability to move around in the arena and do that. I'm just wondering if you've heard anything about that, because there may be a component of that for people who don't want to go someplace live.
Yeah, I've seen several advertisements from vendors who are have the who have a conference package that is animated the way that you're talking about. So when you're moving from session to session, you're coming back into a mixing room and then sorting back out and going down a different path into a different room. I think that's fun. It's fun, and I think it's great right now. I think though that it still doesn't replace that social interaction that we all really crave.
Yep.
And I see that. I think we will transition. That's an example, I think, of something that will stick with events in the future, the VR side, but it will change in its nature, which I look forward to, because I think there'll be a lot of innovation around that. I really look at Europe right now to see what they're doing, because they're a little ahead of us, and they're doing a lot more of the hybrid events. We talk about hybrid events, but we're really just doing virtual right now, and they're actually have people in a room that are socially distanced as an audience and are running the virtual, which I think that is probably our next big move here in the United States, is to see more of that once we get into what our state calls phase 3 or phase 4.
Yeah. So do you mind if I ask another question?
Go, Brad. Yep.
So, one of the things that I know that a lot of people, and by the way, Docs, I'm inspired by the fact that you've mentioned that, because I, again, really believe in human nature, and the things that I've been telling, clients is that whatever the new normal will be, it'll look a whole lot, it'll be different, but to use Dan's analogy, it's kind of a pre 9/11, post 9/11. We're still going to be able to go places. We're still going to be able to congregate. We're still going to be able to do that, because I just believe as human beings, we just crave, to your point, that kind of social interaction. Let's just take a concert, right, as an example. And we've got a great concert venue not far from us in the Gorge. There's some huge musical festivals that go on there. What and by the way, your resume is incredibly impressive, because anybody who lives in the Pacific Northwest, and I know that not all of our listeners do, but anybody who lives in the Pacific Northwest knows those signature events that you've been responsible for putting on. What do you think, like a concert venue or a sports venue, is going to have to do in the future? What's that going to look like when we're able to get back together?
Yeah, that's a good question. I speak with the sports people who represent the sports teams and large concert venues all the time, and nobody knows. There's a lot of guesses right now. I think that the public safety health officers and those teams, I think you're going to be seeing a lot of that, as I mentioned before. It really, we can't gauge yet how the public is going to feel about the transmission of the virus in a large venue, being close together, even if there is an inoculation. And so it's really people. I don't know. I mean, I was really surprised to see the Mariners in all of Major League Sports, how they placed photos of people in the stands, for instance. I thought that was brilliant, and it gave a sense of me wanting to be there. I think there's going to be more of that in our future for the next 6 months than we really would like to admit.
In addition to, for example, there being new waivers on the back of your ticket, could you see a time where, for example, proof of a vaccination would be required for admission, or do you think that we're going to go down that route?
Well, I don't know if proof, but I think you'll be asked the question.
Mm-hmm.
Just like
Or,
when you
or
go
if I can, because this was my question next, Brad. I think it's a good one.
Yeah.
I think I'm seeing the temperature. The quick temp, and I know that the virus has changed a little bit. It's not, you don't always have it. You might not have a temperature, but that at least for a while looked like, hey, we're going to do a quick temperature check, and if you don't have a fever, at least that's a start.
Yeah, I did actually an event not too long ago, surprisingly, it was a rally for it was called Restart, and it was the industry getting together to lobby Congress to pass legislation to help the creative industry. And anyways, what we did at this rally, it was a march and a rally, is I set up a health officer who you couldn't go on to the stage or backstage at all unless you had your temperature read. You were asked all the 6 questions about your state of health. And I just think that is what it's going to be about for the next, I don't know how long, maybe till next September.
Well, Docs, this has had to change everything around your thinking on what do we have to do to set up an event. You had enough things setting up an event. You had enough things to worry about, but in the prep work, this has incredibly changed that. How do you think others in your industry will look at? Do you have to hire more people? Do you have to have different skill sets around how does just the preparation, even after the vaccine and even after people start, because you're right, this whole thing is not going to change. There's potential future diseases and things like that. How has that prep changed for you?
Well, it's changed a lot, and it's one of the things actually I'm really motivated to right now is encouraging the professionals in the industry to not sit on their hands right now and just wait this thing out, but to actually start doing something and start moving forward, because we have enough information to see that it's going to change, and that the finances, the business proposition around running events it's going to be different. And right now, most of the events that are happening, there's a lot of virtual galas going on. The people producing them aren't making the money they used to make on it. The galas, though, are starting to approach the fundraising levels, which that's a good thing. And so I think that we need to start a really active discussion that's happening in the industry right now is what is the new break even on your finances for running an event. There's a lot of ideas on how to run outdoor festivals with social distancing and make the vendors be further apart and all that, but it doesn't make sense yet. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of work. We should just start budgeting it, and everybody should just start looking at the finances as they are now and imagine it, and then start innovating and pivoting towards it.
Not everything can be outdoors. Kind of outdoors seems to be a little easier solve, right? It tends to be a little bit easier to socially distance people. But the question that I'm just wondering, and I started wondering this largely based upon just like school classrooms, et cetera. But would you see that indoor venues may have to get to a point where, I'll just say, general admission seating is no longer the thing, and you're more in what I'll call isolated cubicles. So we go to more of a box seat type arrangement. I mean, do you think that is that an overreaction to something that's going to resolve itself, or does that seem like it's a prudent thing to investigate?
Well, yeah, I think the question is it's a good question, but it's time based. It really is. Are we talking about right now? Are we talking about next month? Are we talking about 6 months from now?
Yeah, I think my question is really more, do we think that that's going to be the future, or would that just be a temporary panacea?
I think that's our future for a year, but I don't think that's our long-term future.
Okay.
I believe we will bounce back and bounce forward, I should say.
Well, before we head to break, Docs, I really want to thank you. Most of our guests in our interviews have really focused around, starting the business and entrepreneurship and all that. You've really been kind in letting us kind of pick your brain about COVID and your industry. We haven't spent a ton of time talking about you, which I want to get to in the back half. So I just want to thank you for really illuminating from an expert position what a lot of people have on their mind regarding events. So thank you.
And I think it's a good news story. So thank you for sharing it.
Yeah. So with that, we do have to take a break, and we're going to take that break to hear from our sponsors. And when we come back with our guest, Doxtater, with the workshop for our Plead the Fifth section of the show, we're going to find out if he had it all to do over again, what would he say? Don't walk away. You got to hear that. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank.
The Seattle Shrimp Tank is brought to you by our studio sponsor, Whedon Unleashed. As a business owner, you do not have a professional life or a personal life. You have a life, and that life is full of opportunities and obstacles. Your business is a vehicle to fuel your life. If you run out of fuel because of a crisis, then your entire lifestyle is affected. Dan Whedon works with small and medium-sized business owners to ensure that no calamity is fatal. Dan focuses on accelerating business growth while at the same time planning and implementing strategies on preventing, mitigating, and recovering from those obstacles of business and life. Through Dan's consulting work and his partnership with First Underwriters Insurance to finance your risk, he'll make sure that with confidence to unleash the value of your business and lifestyle. To get a complimentary review of your situation, call Dan at 360-271-1592 or email him at dan@danwhedon.com. Tell Dan you heard him on the Seattle Shrimp Tank podcast and receive a 20% discount on any work agreed to. Be unleashed and be well.
Welcome back to the Seattle Shrimp Tank from the virtual Whedon Unleashed studio, where we interview the best and brightest CEOs and business thought leaders in Seattle and the greater Puget Sound area. I'm Brad Berger, along with my esteemed co-host Dan Whedon, and you can always catch a replay of the podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or catch us on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. For our next segment, Plead the Fifth.
And of course, Plead the Fifth is sponsored by Shrimp Peelers, West Sound Workforce, Port Ludlow Resort, Kitsap Economic Development Alliance, SJ Graphics, and the Kitsap Sun. So Doc, same principle. We're going to pepper you with questions. This time, you might say, I don't want to answer that. You can plead the fifth once, but just once. Be careful, because the next question after you plead the fifth could be a doozy. So, and again, at the end, you win absolutely nothing. I wanted to talk more about you, but I had this question in mind, so it still deals with it. You wrote a blog early on in the crisis, what lies ahead for the event industry amid COVID-19. Knowing what you know today, what would you change about that blog?
I probably, for me, it's always a balance of being positive, but not being too positive, not being silly positive. I probably would push it out. My projection is just a little bit. I think college football next September is the opening for gatherings and events to resume. Probably is hybrid virtual up until that point.
Got it. So here's a plead the fifth question for you, Docs, and that is, what is the most bizarre request that you ever have received for an event that you walked away from?
Well, this one's maybe not bizarre, and it's a little off the question, but I was offered an important job at Microsoft years ago, and I declined it. I regret that.
Oh. All right. Well, I guess we don't have to ask you, do you have any regrets?
So, plead the fifth. What was the most memorable event you worked on? It could be humorous, frightening, moving, and maybe it was memorable because it didn't turn out quite the way you thought in one way or another. Is there one that kind of just, in all these years of having done it, in 20 plus years, is there one event that you go, that is memorable because?
I have a lot of those. I produced the All-Star game for Major League Baseball and the Mariners in 2001, when the All-Star game was here. And so everything from the roof opening to the first pitch was sort of in my producership. And we put together a really interesting program. It was watched by millions and millions of people worldwide. And I had laid out all of these, the flags of the countries around the world on the field that were represented in Major League Baseball. And you had to lay them out in interesting fashion for the broadcast and for the audience. And it was a really difficult thing to imagine and how to produce. And in fact, the Major League Baseball staff that travels from All-Star to All-Star game, they all bailed on me. Left it to me and my volunteers to do. And we did it. It worked out perfectly. But up until the moment that that occurred, it looked really, really risky in front of millions of people.
You've got to get probably like an athlete, those butterflies in your stomach at certain parts of an event where even though you have confidence, right, there's still that little that butterfly or bat in the stomach saying, "Oh boy."
Yeah. Well, that's the nature of event people, and it's that aspect that either makes or breaks event people. You either can handle that or you can't. And I wouldn't call it butterflies. It really is. When things get tough, you get more focused, and you just bear down on it. And as opposed to having the pressure and the stress push back on you and make you afraid. And that's really the sort of the defining characteristic of people who are good at events, is they all have that.
So, so Docs, I'm going to try and take this question and make some fun with it. So, I would imagine just like it's really difficult to be a culinary expert and go out to eat, for dinner. This is about you going to an event and just having a V8 moment. But have you ever considered, right, having a show? They've got Hotel Impossible, they've got Restaurant and Bar Rescue. Have you ever thought about having a TV show called Event Rescue? Because I'm sure that you've gone to events and said, "Oh my God, could they use me?" What are some of the characteristics when you go to those sorts of events that you say, "Oh, they have so missed the mark here"?
Yeah, it's the other than courage and focus from event planners, the other quality of an event planner is their event brain is always on. You can't turn it off. You can't go to a concert, you can't go to a play, you can't go to anybody else's events and not analyze it. It just happens. And you have to hopefully I've learned to not be too judgmental about that, because you can pick apart anything,
Sure.
Especially in the live experience model. But I don't know. I think the biggest failure that occurs that I'm really looking for, and I look for in my events, is the community interaction, the social interaction, because really the basis of events is not the production of the event. It is the drawing together of a community. And so is your event about that community, or is it about something else, like making money?
So can I ask one more question on this topic,
I think
Dan?
I know we're extending it, but this is great. I have a question too. So you go, Brad, I'll go, and then we'll let Docs off the hook.
Okay. What's the best idea that you stole from another event?
Ooh. I steal a lot of ideas. Oh gosh. Well, so I do the Space Needle fireworks show on New Year's Eve. I've done that since it existed. And in the early days, I stole from the Times Square fireworks show, the ball going up. I think it goes down at there, but we made it go, put a flashing balls of light in one of the elevators that was facing the camera. And then 10, 9, 8, 7, and had it go to the top. Well, that was just totally stolen from Times Square.
That's awesome, Docs. Thanks.
That's a great question. So I'm going to leave with this before Brad sends us moving out on this. And I want to thank you so much. You're an optimistic guy. We talked a little bit before in the pre-show and during this. This has been a really hard time for your industry and for you, everybody involved in that. I know even like Live Nation is everybody who's dealt with events has struggled through this. You're optimistic, and I think Brad and I are optimistic by nature. Can you give some, kind of some walk away points to people as far as, yeah, we can't predict the future, but your optimism about events moving forward?
Yeah, it's I like to think of myself as being optimistic, and I'll tell you my biggest worry about events right now is that we lose the infrastructure that supports events, the people. We lose the vendors, we lose the crews, we lose the stage managers, we lose all those independent contractors that we all depend on, who create our back of house primarily, that make events happen. What I encourage all of us to do is, like I said earlier, don't sit on our hands. Don't just wait this out, and don't look backwards. We got to look forward. We have to look at Europe, see what they're doing right now, because that is our future, and start doing that. Start planning for that, and start building for events to be different, and to place yourself into a position to take on all the new work that's going to happen. Because once we do get back to a gathering, I think there's going to be a real surge of gatherings that are going to want to happen, and the audiences are going to be really happy we're there.
Well, Docs, we want to thank you so much for coming on the program today. For our listeners that want to get in touch with you or learn more about your company, how can they get more information?
Yeah, my website, workshopevents.com.
Awesome. Well, our next show from the virtual Whedon Unleashed studio will be Wednesday, October 7th, 2020, where our guest will be Megan Martin with Indigo Plum. This will be our 99th episode, so don't miss it. Make sure you check out all of the replays on shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle, and now on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And remember, to become a shark, we all start out as shrimps.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond.